Welcome outside Gillette Stadium, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined as always by Patriots expert columnist for WEEI.com, Christopher Price. Again, the weather, Mother Nature, a bit of a story here on Monday afternoon as the Patriots return to practice. Their ninth practice, by our count, of training camp in full pads. We did notice that one player did leave midway through, and we're not going to get an injury update because it is training camp, but Tre Jackson, offensive lineman, a guard. He's been playing right guard for the Patriots. Left early. What did you see, Chris?
He appeared to go down roughly halfway through practice with what might best be described, at least initially, as exhaustion. Like you said, it's about 90 degrees out here. I thought Bill did a very good job before practice today talking about conditioning, fighting through, in kind of developing mental toughness in this heat, and making a point that conditioning is different for different positional players. We've seen offensive linemen more often than not, at least when guys have gone down here in the last handful of years. I can remember Logan Mankin. Same thing happened to him a couple of years ago. So not a surprise to see Tre Jackson go down. We hope he's okay. We haven't heard anything one way or another at this point, though.
Asked Bill Belichick in the Monday press conference about just that point about conditioning. What is it about conditioning that varies from position to position?
I thought it was a really good analogy that he used. And it's offensive linemen really as a whole, are more like boxers, and they have to get that lean on each other, and they have to work on that, and that's how they develop conditioning. It's not a matter of going out and running a bunch of 40-yard sprints or 100-yard sprints. It's different for different guys, and it's important to differentiate that an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman, getting them into shape is a far different proposition than, say, getting a running back or a wide receiver or another skill position guy into shape.
Obviously, when you're talking about the offensive and defensive linemen, they're having to move in short spaces with a lot of explosion. They expend a lot of energy, and they're bigger guys, so you would expect them to lose a lot more fluids during the course of a 2-hour practice, and it was another 2-hour practice as the Patriots look ahead to Wednesday and Thursday in West Virginia, and let us do the same. Your thoughts as, and I know you had this column on WEEI.com, 10 players who could really make an impact this week in West Virginia and looking ahead to New Orleans on Saturday night.
Yeah, there's a handful of guys who are approaching a key week in their overall development as a member of New England Patriots. Guys like Josh Boyce, who has to bounce back from that rough Thursday night opener he had against the Packers. There are other guys like James White who can continue to build on the level of success that they've had over the last week plus. So it's different guys in different positions, but it's all about stacking success. We've talked about that before. You need to be able to, if you've had some good performances, you need to be able to continue on those good performances. If you've had bad performances, you need to kind of flip things around. This is as good a time as any to get headed in the right direction.
I know you're working on this story for Tuesday on WEEI.com. Brian Timms, he talked about taking the class to the grass here on Monday, and you asked him about being really, right now, all things considered, and who's active in terms of wide receivers on the roster. He's the best deep threat that Tom Brady and company have.
He really did, and he kind of took it with a grain of salt because it was a poorly asked question on my part, quite frankly.
No, you're being too hard on yourself. Come on,
But he talked about, I like to think of myself as more than just a deep threat, but at the same time, when you look at this roster and you look at the fact that there's no Aaron Dobson, Josh Boyce has struggled, Brandon LaFell has been used on occasion as a deep threat, but he hasn't been on the field this summer. Brian Timms is a guy right now who can do the best to take advantage of the opportunities that have been presented to him. This team has not gone deep a lot over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, it feels like nitpicking, but quite frankly, this offense, they haven't gone deep. One of the reasons, they just haven't had a dependable deep threat on the roster the last few years. Brian Timms has an opportunity to be that guy.
Somebody that really looms as a dark horse on this roster in terms of receivers is Chris Harper. Talked about him over the weekend, the rookie free agent out of Cal, and I had a chance after practice to talk to him, and he said, look, it's all about opportunity, especially the snaps I get on special teams. But I think Chris Harper is a guy that could be a dark horse to challenge a guy like Brian Timms on the roster to go deep on routes. And certainly in something you brought up as we were watching practice today, at least one free agent, undrafted free agent, has made this roster in each of the last 11 seasons.
Yeah, and he appears right now to be as good a candidate as any. I think a couple things have to happen in his favor for him to make the final 53, but at the same time, guys like Harper, guys like David Andrews, who we saw working at center and guard today. Right. Those are the kinds of guys who I think right now have the best chance to make that final 53.
All right, the Patriots will wrap up training camp practice here on Tuesday before departing for West Virginia and the Greenbrier Resort for joint practices on Wednesday and Thursday. The plan is pretty much TBD still on Friday, and then they will play Drew Brees and company on Saturday down in the New Orleans Superdome in preseason game number 2. That'll be a wrap from outside a very hot and steamy Gillette Stadium here on Monday. He is Christopher Price. I'm Mike Petraglia, WEEI.com.